Hey, it's Adrian Hernandez here, 1140 The Bet, 985 The Fan HD2, YouTube, Audacy Sports, wherever you're getting us. I wish we were joined by our guest under better circumstances, but it is what it is. Our Raiders insider, Scott Gulbransen, of course, he is one half of the Silver and Black podcast, or Silver and Black Today, excuse me, an Audacy original, a podcast alongside Mo Moten, available on the Audacy app, wherever you get your podcast. And Scott, like I said, I wish I was talking to you under different circumstances. Nobody expected an 0-3 start. We're the only winless team in the league. Where are you at a day removed from the 2-point loss to the Titans?
Well, I'll tell you, this team, to say it's at a crossroads, I don't even know if it's at a crossroads. I think that it's gotten off to such a poor start for them. With what they did in the offseason. You think about the general manager, Dave Ziegler, you think about the head coach, Josh McDaniels, you think about the trade for Davante Adams, the long-term deals for Davante Adams after they traded for him. And then, of course, shoring up Hunter Renfrow, Darren Waller, Derek Carr to a deal. They kind of did everything they were supposed to. This is a playoff team from a year ago. And I know some people are going to say, well, yeah, but they had to win 5 out of their last 6 to get to play. They did. But so they are a playoff team from a year ago. To see a team with veterans come back from that season after all that they faced last year, after all the tumult, they come back, they make the playoffs. And then this year they go out there and they look lost. I mean, that's the only word I can use, Adrian, is they look lost. They don't look like they've grasped the offense. The defense does not look good. And it's weird. I think that the situation, you have to look mostly at the coaching. I mean, what's the difference? The difference is the coaching. And they added weapons. But the biggest change is in the coaching staff, and something's not clicking between that coaching staff, the quarterback, and the rest of the roster.
And let's go specifically into this game yesterday against Tennessee. I'm going to give you 3 options to pick from in terms of what was most frustrating. The flat start that they've had in the first 2 games as well. The Cardinals was a little different, but yesterday was a flat start. Going forward on 4th down, but then later in the game, opting for the field goal inside of the red zone, or the Darren Waller drops. Out of those 3 options, what's the most frustrating?
All of the above, but I will say the slow start, and I'll tell you why. Because listen, you come into this game at 0-2, okay? After the huge loss against the Cardinals at home, and the way you lose because of a fumble. And I know Hunter Renfrow got hurt, and I hope he's feeling better. Good dude. But the way in which you lost the Cardinals game, so you go on the road with some urgency. At least you would expect there would be urgency. And then you come out flat. You come out as flat as a tire over a nail down Spring Mountain with some construction going on. And what happens? You come out, you go flat. Suddenly you see the Titans go to the lead. You get the ball to start that first drive. You go all the way down, can't get in the red zone, can't score, have to settle for a field goal. So that's why I tie the slow start with the field goal, because the Raiders for the last 3 years have had a problem scoring in the red zone. Everybody blamed John Gruden. And listen, they should have, because he was the coach. But now here you have a whole different staff. You get down there, supposedly an offensive guru with Josh McDaniels, and they still can't figure it out. Now, some of it was drops. Some of it was confusion on that route in the end zone on that first drive with Davante Adams would have been clearly wide open for a touchdown. Darren Waller steps in front of him thinking the pass is for him. It was just a disaster there. So that slow start tells me that people aren't on the same page. It doesn't mean players are bad. It doesn't mean Carr needs to go and all this other over emotional stuff you hear from Raider Nation. But what it tells me is that something is not working in the lines of communication between coaching staff, players, and execution.
And Scott, were you surprised at the lack of the run game? Just checked it before we started this interview. So only 13 attempts for Josh Jacobs. I think it was 17 total as a team. And even you tweeted it out this morning, and be sure to follow Scott at LV Gully. According to PFF, the Raiders are the 8th best running team in the league. So to only have 13 for Josh Jacobs, who's been working his ass off, and 17 total as a team, any explanation for that?
No, I mean, it goes back to coaching, and my co-host Mo Moten on Silver and Black Today said this last week after the Cardinals loss. He says, sometimes you get an offensive genius, a coach who thinks they're smarter than everybody in the room and that they'd have to show it, right? And so suddenly you try to outthink yourself. And I think this is a case of that, because the Raiders come out with a still sick Josh Jacobs, who runs the ball effectively in the first half. You come out in the second half and you start with what, six pass plays in a row.
Yeah.
What are you doing here? And not only that, but remember, Adrian, the Titans had an awful defense against the run. I mean, yes, the Bills picked them apart with Josh Allen in the passing game, but if you saw the game, if you've seen what they've done so far this season, they got nothing up the middle. You can run on them all day. So why wouldn't the Raiders run on them? I don't understand. Now, you can use the excuse, well, we got behind. No, the game was close at points. They could have run the ball. They chose to pass the ball.
Oh boy. Listen, I'm kind of flabbergasted, Scott, because I did not expect this. And I even went back and I wanted to get the specific date. You joined us here July 21st in the middle of training camp. And I asked you, and I asked Mo this question as well. I asked you about Josh McDaniels and a honeymoon phase. Well, we're not a month into the regular season. Obviously, viewpoints have changed. Where are you, though, basically? You brought him up a ton so far. Where are you at with the new coach?
It's a huge disappointment so far. I mean, there's no other way to put it. I'm not one of these emotional fans, and God bless them. They are the lifeblood of Raider Nation. But I'm looking at it objectively, and I'm not saying you fire the coach now, right? Which is what some Raider fans want already. Like, firing coaches has gotten you anywhere in the past, but that's beside the point. But you're 3 games in. We know from reports that there was a long meeting with Mark Davis after the game yesterday between him and Josh McDaniels before he went into the press conference. Not unusual per se, but clearly. Go ahead.
Hold on real quick. Sorry to cut you off. That's a little unusual. Like, that doesn't, I understand Mark's probably hyped because there's other franchises out here winning championships and the
I'll
expectation.
get to that in a second.
And obviously you brought it up at the beginning of the interview of all the additions and everyone that's been added. Yeah. But to do that publicly, where the media can tell, oh, they're in a meeting, this is why he's not at the post-game press conference and things like that. We're 3 weeks in, and we'll get into another question that hopefully kind of shines some positivity for Raiders fans tuning in. But to me, that's a little bit over the top and unnecessary. Who am I? He's a billionaire. He owns the team. He can do what he wants. But am I off base with that?
No, I think what I meant to say was that it's not uncommon for owners to meet with coaches after games. A closed door, longer meeting, absolutely. I think that sends a message. But I also think that what people need to look at is as much criticism, I believe, that Josh McDaniels deserves, because look, he's the head coach. This team is not clicking. There's obviously communications issues. Derek Carr, Darren Waller, Devontae Adams all hinted that some guys aren't practicing with good execution, which shows up in games. They said this themselves on Sunday. But what about Mark Davis? Has Mark Davis been distracted? I mean, listen, you're the NFL owner, and I'm perfectly fine. I am not a big WNBA fan. Let me make it perfectly clear. If you listen to the show, you know this. But congratulations to the Aces. The ladies are amazingly talented. But he skipped their opening game to go to the Aces championship game. I understand it to a certain degree. But let me tell you something. I think there's some issue there. If you read Vic Tafer's piece in The Athletic, he talks about it. He says, hey, Mark Davis was kind of absent the last month.
What does that mean?
So it means,
I'm gonna for you and Vic, what does that mean? He's the owner. He's not a coach. He's not on the field.
No,
he can be there to be the richest cheerleader for the franchise, but he's not changing a damn thing when it comes to the team and their performance, because he's watching. What is he? Is this a situation where there's a substitute teacher? So now the Raiders players are like, we can do what we want. Like, that's not. Mark's not doing that.
But perhaps the expectation. Well, listen, perhaps the expectation and the distraction. Listen, if you're the owner, you're right. You don't interfere with Dave Ziegler working day to day on the roster. You don't interfere with Josh McDaniels coaching. He's not his father. He's not Al Davis. He's not a coach. He doesn't go down on the field and sit there and watch practice every day. No question. There's big differences there. At the same time, though, he's surprised that his team got off to start. If he was around more, perhaps he would have seen issues and maybe the discussion happens earlier. That's the only thing I'm thinking. And I can't answer for Vic, who's a great sports writer. But to me, it seems to me that a lot of what I praised them for in the preseason, which was focus, discipline, I saw a lot of it. It's the reason they went 4-0 in the preseason. I know that means nothing, but you saw the organizational differences. Since the regular season began, it seems as though that is not there. Where does that come from? We don't know. Do they need to figure it out like now? Absolutely.
I mean, you're right about that. And I guess I would just say, like, be careful what you wish for when you want Jerry Jones. a Jerry Jones type hands-on owner because you're going to get Jerry
No,
Jones.
Mark Davis will never be that. Mark
Well,
Davis never be. He doesn't know football well enough to that, and he's the first one to admit it.
You just said it then. So what does it matter if he's there or not? Like, to me, I'd rather have him in the shadows, just making sure the paychecks are being paid every 2 weeks or whatever the case.
Well, because Adrian, let's put it into terms that you and I would better understand, right? Which is, if I owned a radio station, right? Let's say I'm an owner. I'm not Audacy, which is a big corporation, but let's say I'm just an owner of a radio station. I'm not going to go on the air because I'm not a jock. I'm not any of these guys. I'm not a producer. I'm not an engineer. I'm not a sales guy. But I can set the expectation for the station to say, hey, listen, I want focus. This is what I want. And if I don't see organizationally things that are happening, then I'm going to say, hey, listen, this is my business. At the end of the day, it's my responsibility. And so if we're going to be a winning franchise, I need to make sure everybody's focused on their jobs. I don't know their jobs. I'm not going to tell them how to do their jobs. I'm just going to set an expectation. And I think Mark Davis did that. I think he set the expectation. We're coming off a playoff year. He set the expectation too, Adrian, in doling out the money to sign these veterans to deals. That means you're not in rebuilding mode. That means 0-3 is not acceptable. That means missing the playoffs is not acceptable, right? We talked about that the last time we talked. What is the expectation for this team? The expectation for this team is not just to make the playoffs. It's to make the playoffs and win a game for once. And so I think that's where the owner sets that. To your point, not involved in the day-to-day and tinkering, but setting the expectation of what success is and what success is not.
And on the flip side, trying to put a positive note, because yes,
the
only winless team in the league, they're 0-3. They say it's a game of inches. I know a lot of people were punching air and probably walls yesterday, but this team could very easily be 3-0 with a couple of plays going Vegas's way. So with that being said, if there is hope for this team here in the future, what is it?
Well, I think you look at the offense. I don't think that you talked about Darren Waller with the drops he had on Sunday, no question. And he talked about in the postgame, he's a stand-up dude. I mean, Darren, you're never going to question Darren Waller's, fortitude and his stature. He said, look, I got to focus better. There were balls I should have caught, I didn't catch. So he took that on. There's no sense in beating on Darren Waller because he's a hell of a player. But I do see that offense, and I say all those weapons, and I say to myself, this team can score a lot of points. This team can get this thing going very quickly. Why haven't they? That's why I go back to coaching. So from a positive perspective, I think it's there. The talent's there. Yes, they were without Hunter Renfrow on Sunday, but he'll be back. So they have the full complement of weapons. The offensive line, you want to talk about a positive, the offensive line played really well against Tennessee. Are they all pro? No, but they played better. For the most of the game, Derek Carr had a clean pocket. Okay. So you look at play calling and game planning, there's issues there, but they have the offense. That's a huge positive. The defense is getting me more and more worried at times, but the defense also, if you want to look for positives in the second half of the Titans game, didn't give up a point, got takeaways, held on a 4th and 1. So you're seeing some bright spots there. And I think this team, for whatever reason, that's why it's so perplexing and disappointing, is this isn't a team that has been turned over and rebuilt. This is a team who had veterans who went through a playoff run last year, and they should be doing better. And I think they will do better, but right now it just looks bleak because of how they've started.
Scott Gulbransen joining us, Silver and Black, today, an Audacy original. Be sure to check that out on the Audacy app or wherever you get your podcasts. Him alongside Mo Moten. And Scott, you don't know this about me. One thing I love to do is role play, so let's do it right now. You're waking up this morning. You're Dave Ziegler. You're in Henderson. You're at Raiders headquarters. You have $20 million in cap space. Are you doing anything to improve the team? Are you riding the wave and trusting that the system and the players in place can kind of dig themselves out of this hole?
Well, I wake up and I think to myself first, boy, maybe I should have waited on the Waller contract and gotten another offensive lineman and a defensive tackle. But when I get past that, I say to myself, look, Ndamukong Suh's still out there. If he wants $9 million, yeah, I'm not going to give him 9, but should I talk to him and see if I can get him for less to bolster the inside of the defensive line that is not doing much at all? Absolutely. I think they're going to roll with the offensive line. It's starting to get better. And so if I'm going to take a little bit of the money that I have, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go get some help on the defensive side. Also need to get some guys healthy in the defensive backfield. We saw yesterday, Jonathan Abram cannot cover anyone. I might be able to do a post pattern and beat him to the ball. That's how bad he is in coverage.
He was attacked last night a lot.
Yeah, he was. And listen, he's great on the line. He's great rushing the passer, but that's too limited in today's NFL. So I don't expect him to be back next year. So they need help there. But you look at Amik Robertson, continues to improve. He got beat on one play yesterday, but he looked better. Nate Hobbs had a concussion. Again, an already thin and young defensive backfield. But you see some of the guys, Deron Harmon, the veteran that came over from Tennessee, did well yesterday as well. So there's spots there. I just think that if you look at that defense, they're going to have to do something. And if I'm Dave Ziegler, I look at improving that defense and then just getting the plays and the cadence going on offense, because they don't need anything on offense, I don't think.
So looking ahead, Raiders at home versus the Broncos, the Monday Night Football versus the Chiefs. I have no idea. And when we're going to get to the division, that'll be the last question. I have no idea how the Broncos are 2-1 right now. But
Jimmy Garoppolo.
With that being said, I have no idea how the Raiders are 0-3. Do you think that this team could start out 0-5?
Could they? Yes. Will they? I don't think so. If I was going to put down money, if I was going to run down to the sports book or on my phone and bet it, I would say that they end up at the week 6 bye at 1-4, because I think they will come home and beat the Broncos. They need to beat the Broncos. If they don't win against the Broncos, then all bets are off.
It's going to be an ugly scene at Allegiant Stadium if that's the case.
And could they go beat if they come out and they are the team everyone expected against the Broncos and they get some positive I think this team needs that too. You know, if you ever been on a team where things are just going bad, you just need some of that you need to believe in yourself and get everyone else to believe in you. But inside the locker room, everybody's got to believe in one another, that you're on the same page. And if they can do that against the Broncos, then I give them a shot at beating the Chiefs. But let's just be honest. The odds are stacked against them. They haven't been good in Kansas City that much over the last 10 years, except for a couple times. So if they can go in to the break at 1-4, not good, but it'll be a lot better than 0-5. And certainly if they can somehow beat the Chiefs and go in at 2-3, then you could switch the whole season around. And all the stats about only 12% of teams that go 0-3 make the playoffs, that could change the whole conversation.
And before we get you out of here, so speaking of the Chiefs, yesterday they lose to Indy. Indy couldn't beat Houston and couldn't beat Jacksonville. Speaking of Jacksonville, the Chargers lose to Jacksonville at home, got their ass beat. Denver's looked atrocious. I just said it. It's unbelievable how they're 2-1. Out of all those other teams here that are the Raiders' rival, which team do you have the biggest concerns about not necessarily against the Raiders, but that, this is not turning out how they were expecting, just like the Raiders going into the season?
I think the Colts are definitely one of them. I know they won the game yesterday, but they've been extremely disappointing. I think if you look at what they've done, and then you have to look at the Broncos. I know a lot of us picked the Broncos to be last in the division. I just didn't think, and I'm a Russell Wilson fan, by the way. I thought Russell Wilson would go there and play well. He has played terribly. There's no other way to say it. That's not me. And it's a guy I like. He's just not playing well. So they've been very surprising to me as well. The team that surprised me on the other side of it being good has been Atlanta. I bet Atlanta to not win more than 2 games this year. And here they are. So I think that there's lots of surprises around the NFL, which gives the Raiders some hope and some optimism. I think if they can turn it around in these next 2 games, it could be a completely different year for them. But they got to get it together because, again, you signed all these guys to these deals, veteran deals. And if they can't get to the break at least 1-4, which I know would be incredibly disappointing, but if they can't get to the break 1-4, then literally all bets are off the table, because I just don't know what'll happen, because to be at 0-5 when you were a 10-7 team last year would not be acceptable in anybody's book.
You're damn right. And before we get you out of here, Silver and Black today, what's the schedule? What are we looking at this week?
Yeah, sure. So we have our shows 3 times a week, or actually 4 times a week. If you look at our Sunday post game. So every time the Raiders play, we go on live about 20, 30 minutes after, which you can also catch on YouTube live, but you can also get that on the podcast feed. Like you said, it's an Audacy original podcast. You can get it anywhere you get your podcast. Then we do Tuesday show. We do a Wednesday mailbag show where we answer our listeners' email, which is always fun. A lot of not only Raider stuff, but also my co-host Mo Moten has some peculiar food likes and dislikes. So we even talk about that stuff. So we have some fun. Then we do our Thursday show. We'll really turn our attention to the weekend and to the game ahead. And that's usually when we have a guest as well. So you can go Sunday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday with Silver and Black today.
Listen.
By the way, Adrian, let me mention the show is also on 1140 The Bet early morning at 4 a.m. on Sundays, but also Sundays at 9 to 10 a.m. on 98.5 The Fan, The Bet. So you can catch the show there as well.
So there's no excuse on why you shouldn't be tuned in. Scott, it got a little pretentious with the Aces and Mark Davis. I actually loved it.
You're a fan. It's okay. I get it.
There it is. Scott Gulbransen joining us as always. Scott, we'll talk to you soon, and thank you for joining us.
Absolutely, Adrian. And thank you for being one of the 284,000 people who watched the WNBA final, because that's you can't get anywhere until you start growing.
Hey, at least Mark Davis now
invested.
knows what a championship franchise actually looks like. So maybe he can bring that to the Raiders.
That's true. And I'll tell you, I am a Kelsey Plum fan. I like her. I'm also a cigar smoker, so I was glad to see her enjoying a nice stogie when they did the parade. And the parade looked awesome. It was great. It was much better than the parade the year before. So it shows you what kind of great sports fans Vegas are.
I'm still a little hungover from the parade. You do realize that parade was like historic for Vegas sports, like just in like the history of Vegas and what's going to happen here in the future. We'll talk about this later, Scott. You got to go. Bye, Scott.
All right. Thanks, Adrian. Take care.